So now you can use the Force to heal people. What are they, waterbend? Rian Johnson already gave them the middle finger when he made that movie. As for me,